welcome to you all the way from Australia for this unwrapping session. Did you receive the book?
I'm unwrapping the book, which has newly arrived for me. And here it is. Leadership in Listening. So congratulations, Victor. It's a very important contribution to the literature.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask you some questions. For instance, is there a particular part of the listening where you see yourself, well, this is the one I have to improve?
As you know, my particular focus and my area of research has been on organizational listening. Every person needs to deal with organizations. Now, when you deal with organizations, whether they are large corporations or governments, of course, ultimately, we're talking to people. But organizations are unique in several ways. And the first is the issue of scale. Organizations not only have to listen to a few people, they often have to listen to thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of people in some cases. So scale is a big issue. And that in turn leads to the fact that in an organization, the listening is often delegated. So it may not just be the CEO and the management, it's delegated to customer service departments, it's delegated to market research companies. And therefore, the third characteristic is that the listening is often mediated. It's done through looking at text like emails and correspondence and calls to call centers. And so I'm particularly interested in extending the interpersonal skills, but applying them in an organizational environment where there needs to be a culture of listening. And there also, because it's delegated and at scale, there often needs to be tools and systems and technologies to help an organization listen.
You are a distinguished professor. What are the main important insights at this moment?
One of the first important insights I found is that whether you're an individual or an organization, you have to want to listen. In some cases, I found in research, individuals and organizations don't deep down believe that others have got something valuable to say. They feel very confident that they know everything that needs to be known. And if that's the case, then no amount of time, no amount of training, and no amount of tools and technologies will enable listening. So that caused me, my first conclusion is that a culture of listening is the very first part of what I call an architecture of listening. But then, of course, the issues that I just mentioned, like scale in an organizational context, listening to a few people is challenging. Listening to thousands or hundreds of thousands is very, very different. So what happens when an organization or it gets thousands of letters or thousands of email or thousands of posts on social media? They need a range of skills beyond their ears, if you like. They need things like text analysis, machine learning, natural language processing.
My book is more about the individual aspects. I think it can apply to organizational listening, but the main issue I saw is that people are possible to listen to themselves, to others, and to the big picture. How do you think of this concept?
I agree. I think listening is both psychology and technology when it comes to an organizational context. But I would agree that the psychology comes first. If you don't want to listen, if you don't listen to yourself, which some people might refer to as reflection and reflexivity, but listening to yourself and listening to others, if you don't see benefit in that, if you don't have those kind of relationships, if you don't respect people, then no amount of technology is going to help.
I totally agree. Well, what we see in the training we conduct at the Erasmus University, we have people from very big organizations like Google or the United Nations, and those organizations can make a difference in spreading listening through the world. And what do you think should be their effort, those big organizations, in doing that?
I think big organizations should show leadership. And listening is part of leadership, as you've very rightly identified. We know that communication is a major characteristic of good leadership. So CEOs and senior managers need to listen to themselves. They need to listen to their employees. Our first key stakeholder group are our employees. And I believe they should take pages out of your book and pages out of my book on organizational listening. So they've got to have the right attitude. They've got to have the interpersonal skills. And then when it comes to the environment and the World Wide Web, the social media, and large customer groups or citizens of a nation, that's where they need to look at organizational listening techniques that complement the interpersonal skills that you've talked about.
Yeah. How do you see the path that listening makes this world a better place? Because that's my dream.
I constantly do research into communication, public communication in particular, and what I see is an enormous industry of talking. And what I do find is they're about 90% speaking and only 10% listening. And if we're not listening to people, it is the greatest disrespect and the greatest injury we can do to them. And that cannot make a good society. So if we flip that and we do more listening to our employees, listening to our customers, listening to our citizens, it will make society a much, much better place. And I think a lot of the instability we're seeing in democracies at a macro level, a lot of the churn we're seeing among customers in some organization is a result of not listening to them.
So Jim, thank you very much for this interview. I think we got something which adds something to each other, the organizational part and the individual part. So I hope to work together in the future to make those things add on to each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.